Hey everybody, what's up? Thieving for Liberty at Occupy Tampa.
Democrats are reportedly at work right now on a campaign strategy to push back against a growing...
This is America today. Why do we spend so much money on war when we suppose...
All right, around the world, wherever you're watching, welcome to the Thieving for Liberty program. And we have, buckle your seatbelt, gang. We have a lot of things to get into. We have an inflation report coming up after this that you do not want to miss. It is definitely want to bring in the sheeple for they can see that inflation report, for they could understand kind of where we're living, all right? Now I want to just talk about, if you've been watching me for a while or you've been a friend of mine on Facebook, you know that for some time I've been promoting a company called Kiva.org. And what it is, it's basically microfinancing to people in very poor countries that need like $25 to start up a business, right? Some cases, the loans are all about $25. And in some cases, you know, it's a loan of $1,000 literally that collectively, all the $25 donations, and allow them to buy, you know, products or whatever it is, you know, like water bottles and, you know, stuff like that, and then they go and they sell them. And what's amazing to me is, like, for example, in just a few months ago, I did a loan to a group called the Serenade Group, and you see their photo up here, these lovely women. This group includes a bunch of Marias, because they're in Paraguay. So, I mean, literally everybody in this picture that you're seeing right now is named Maria except for Cecilia and Julia, but everybody else is Maria. So this group, I made them a $25 loan 3 months ago. $25. I mean, for them, $25 in their country, it's a lot of money, right? And actually the loan was close to $7,000, right? Totally, between everybody else. Their repayment is 93%, and they're not finished. They've made all their payments on time. They've covered everything. Never had a problem, right? In fact, the microfinancing for Kiva overall is above 90% for the microfinancing, which then brings me to the banking cartels on Wall Street. What are their repayment? In fact, they're not repaying anybody. They're actually stealing your tax dollars via either inflation or bailouts, pretty almost, you know, one and the same, to continue their gambling saloon on Wall Street, stealing from Main Street. They are robbing from the American Paul to pay for the banking Peter, if you will, or the American Peter to pay for the banking Paul, however you want to put it. Which brings me, of course, to MF Global, Mr. Jon Corzine. Now, this is really amazing. This story actually broke early this week. I kind of been waiting to just get all the facts, wanted to see all the stuff going on, you know, because there's a lot of things going with this. You know, kind of interestingly enough, or shouldn't really surprise us, Goldman Sachs, ex-Goldman Sachs executive in the 90s, Jon Corzine, stood over the whole deregulation thing. He was, you know, pushing the deregulation train, the repeal of Glass-Steagall, all done by Jon Corzine, who then in 2001 is elected as a senator for New Jersey. Then he goes on to be governor, and eventually we finally voted him out of office with Chris Christie in New Jersey. Or actually, I didn't, but people up in New Jersey, you guys in New Jersey, you voted him out of office. Good job. He was brought in because they thought the struggling unemployment, the whole deficit thing, that actually Goldman Sachs and people like Jon Corzine make much worse. The voters in New Jersey thought, hey, maybe he can make things better. But no, he really didn't. Things got way worse in New Jersey. What's always been a Democrat state flipped Republican. I don't believe in the whole two-party paradigm, but I think anything's better than this banking criminal. So MF Global, one of the top 10 bankruptcies of history in the United States. $1.5 billion of that money just, you know, can't find it. You know, where did it go? I don't know. Where's the 1.5 billion? Is it in my pocket? No, I don't know. Nobody knows, right? What Jon Corzine did is he took over in 2010. And in 2010, he took over MF Global in 2010. And he was supposed to be like this rock star on Wall Street. So much so that I'm going to go all the way back into the time machine, back into August of 2011, way back into August of 2011, to a story from Bloomberg that said, quote, Wall Street stunned by Corzine's Obama covenant. This guy actually issued $300 million in 5-year unsecured notes that would pay an extra 1% interest if he happened to leave. In some of these Wall Street hedge fund firms, when you have a manager that's supposed to be like this rock star manager, they usually will issue bonds and pay a higher return if that one person, if the fund is centered around this person, if he actually takes off. So people actually thought this guy was good enough to will pay more money if he leaves, but only under the stipulation if he leaves to go work for President Obama. Gets a federal job by 2013. Interestingly enough, when Timothy Geithner was being rumored to leave, they were going to put this guy, John Corzine, into the Secretary of Treasury. He was going to be the U.S. Treasury. Now, we know there's all kinds of fraud going on at MF Global. FBI now is probing. Firm admits using cash, the client's cash to basically try to fix some of his trouble. But here's what really has not been so reported or talked about. And then I'll get into why the thing failed and what that means overall. But this firm was actually appointed by this guy. Yeah, Ben Bernanke in the Fed, right? Bernanke, remember, in the Dodd-Frank bill passed by Barney Frank in Dodd, Christopher Dodd, I forgot the guy's first name. He was actually put in charge of protecting you, the consumer. Yeah, I'm going to bed much safer at night, knowing that good old Ben with the little bitty hair on top of his head when he took the picture, that he's protecting me and, kind of looking out for me, right? So the Fed puts MF Global in charge of one of its, it was designed by the Federal Reserve. It's a primary dealer in U.S. Treasuries. So let me get this straight. The Fed, who is supposed to be protecting you now, they're the big consumer protection agency, right? They're protecting you, but yet they put this firm in to sell U.S. Treasuries. And remember, they're also supposed to be regulating all these firms. After the Lehman bankruptcy, it was all this tough regulation. Obama's going to save the world. George Bush was going to get tough on regulation, and the two-party system was going to do something about it. Well, not so much, because MF Global had liabilities of $44 billion. In fact, going back to end of June of this year, the total liabilities were $44.4 billion, and only had assets or equity of $1.4 billion. Talk about over-leveraged. Now, what does this mean for the rest of Wall Street? We're almost 3 years past the implosion of Lehman and all these other, where we thought, oh, that's the worst is behind us. Obama's given speeches that, they pulled us back from the brink and what have you. But yet we still have firms like MF Global who are leveraged $44 million in liability, only $1.4 billion in assets or in equity. Imagine that. Seriously over-leveraged. Okay, so which brings me to how this company ended up failing. How the genius of Mr. John Corzine could have failed, could have gone bankrupt. Well, he had over $6 billion betted on European debt. He was expecting that the European Union would basically come in and save the day, which it looks like they may do that, contrary to what's happening in Greece, yet it wasn't done in time to save Mr. Corzine and his company. So it blew up. MF Global had a huge position in derivatives linked to Europe. Europe hasn't even failed yet, and already you have one of the top 10 bankruptcies in U.S. history. Greece is on the verge of failing. Europe is going to fail. Italy, that whole tangled web of deceit, of lies, of debt that I unveiled in the program this week, the earlier program that I did this week, showed you how much debt there actually is. And that didn't even include the derivatives behind it all in dollars, by the way, right? So interesting, we'll see what's going to happen. But this guy made a big bet on Europe. It failed. Now he's bankrupt. You would think that he'd have to kind of be like, oh, I better go into hiding. Yes, I'm Mr. Corzine, but now I'm somebody else. And, you don't know where I'm at. I have to go hide because I'm going to go in jail. But no, that's not the case. These criminals will be out in the open. Obama won't do anything to them, or the Republicans or the Democrats. Happens to be that Corzine was Obama's #1 or top fundraiser for his 2012 re-election. And Obama's kind of thinking, well, maybe I'll give the money back, the campaign contributions back, only if they're found guilty of doing something, even though they've already admitted taking $1.5 billion of customer cash. Look, it's not just about Obama. I mean, he's just a puppet of all this, right? These guys are just players. For some reason, they decided to pull the plug on Corzine and have done nothing about the $80 trillion in derivatives of Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase. Maybe this guy goes to jail, John Corzine, as he should, but he'll just be used as an example. The real players behind it, the people behind this guy that run the Federal Reserve, they just continue to print money and get away with these crimes, okay? So that's my take on MF Global. We'll be back in just a second. All right, everybody, Fabian for Liberty, and we're back now with the special inflation report that I wanted to, that I actually spoke about last night, the video if you saw it. Inflation's a very important thing. I mean, many of us think there might be actually hyperinflation coming, so let's just hit that right now. Joining us, I had to bring in an anchor to help me with this because a lot of stuff to cover. So we have Amanda joining us now to help us cover inflation. Come on, Amanda, why don't you... Okay, so Amanda, tell me what is the what's projected for 2011? What's inflation for 2012? What's your thoughts?
Well, basically, the folks at the USDA released their projections for 2011 and 2012.
Wait a minute, you're in the bikini, Amanda. Why are you in the bikini?
Well, the price of clothes right now is so high that I just have to wear a bikini.
Okay, so prices of clothes are going up so much that good-looking girls might have to wear bikinis.
All the time.
Okay, so maybe he's not that bad after all. I'm just saying. Okay, so tell us again. Clothes. Inflation for food. How much? What are they saying?
They're saying that the bad news is that feeding ourselves will cost 4% more this year, but then next year prices will rise 2.5%.
Okay, so this year was 4%. Next year they're only saying 2.5%. Government numbers are typically not really too reliable. What are they saying about actual food? I mean, I'm saying meats and fish, seafood, stuff like that. It's going to be like 6% plus. What are they? Right.
They're saying that meats, poultry, and fish are going to go up 6%. Right. Seafood 6.5%, beef 9%. Fresh vegetables about 5%, and cooking oil 7.5%.
Wow, so how they can keep it at 2.5% is kind of not really too realistic. Now, one of the things they had to say was where they get the 2.5% was processed foods, and what else was it?
Processed vegetables and beverages as well.
Okay, so that's going to only be, so they basically want to switch Americans into, instead of having like a fresh diet, eating good stuff, it's kind of like processed foods and just drinking Coke, so I don't know if really that's the best thing. No. Amanda might be onto something. The price of cotton alone last year up over 100%, cotton alone. All right, let's talk about some of the stuff as far as people actually gardening and producing food at their own home. What's that about?
Sure. Well, in the 1930s, 19% of all food consumed was produced at home. By 1960, that percentage had fallen to 6%. And in 2010, it was about 1.6%. While this trend is not surprising to us, the magnitude of the drop is worth nothing. At one time, we were a nation of gardeners. Today, we're just, we just do the drive-thru.
We just, do the drive-thru. We watch NFL football and basically sit on the couch and eat potato chips. That's basically
whatever's
what we do.
easy.
Whatever is easy. That is right. So the whole idea of America used to be self-reliant. They used to actually grow stuff in their own, house. It's completely lost. Now we are victims to the big food that gives us all this crappy food that actually makes us sick, and the cost of that is pretty alarming as far as the people dying from actually eating the processed foods that Ben Bernanke and the demonic Federal Reserve wants us to just eat if we want to be above the 2.5% inflation. What's that about?
Well, there's actually a lot more illnesses and hospitalizations due to the food consumption that everyone is having right now, basically due to people not going through with actually being their own gardeners, producing their own food, or the cost of fresh food over the cost of your fast food drive-in. Right,
interesting. So, okay, so food and prices, last night I said that anywhere that you look, you see prices increase at the grocery store. Now, Bernanke, everybody else, these government phony figures, they say 2% only. We know on Main Street, we know that's a hoax. We know it's an absolute scam. One of the most alarming things, though, and I'm going to cover this in the next segment, what it means for food. All revolutions, if you see the Middle East, Tunisia, Egypt, they stem from food. People can't afford food, and when they can't afford food, they're pissed off, they get angry, they go in the streets and they riot, or they steal your food. So the food inflation in some of these other countries is absolutely alarming, quite frankly. You want to go over some of those, Amanda?
Sure. The high population countries are as follows. Vietnam at 38%, Indonesia at 32%, India at 28%, and China at 22%.
Okay, China at 22%. India, 28% food inflation is absolutely, that's pretty crazy numbers. here, though, is the most alarming about China? And if you want to cover that point, Amanda.
Sure. The USDA put the per person food cost in China at $129 in 2000. Today, that number is $360, 280% increase. Over the same period, the USA consumption increased only 42%.
Okay, so a 200% increase. Now, so this guy here, although he, again, there might be some positives that, the money printing, you'll be seeing more girls like Amanda walking around in bikinis. That could be positive. But his policies, printing the money at the Fed, exporting the dollar around the world, is costing, in China, over the last 10 years, inflation to go up 200%. In America, 42%. That could only last for so long. It is only so sustainable until it becomes unsustainable and you begin to see revolution spread around the world. So Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the program. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll have her back in the future.
Thank you so much.
Hey everybody, what's up? Thieving for Liberty at Occupy Tampa.
Democrats are reportedly at work right now on a campaign strategy to push back against a growing...
This is America today. Why do we spend so much money on war when we suppose